I sat before the fire with a glass in my hand. "I can assure you," said I, "that it will take a very tangible ghost to frighten me." "It is your own choosing," said the man with the withered arm. The old woman sat staring hard into the fire. "You've never seen the likes of this house, I reckon," she said, her pale eyes wide open. I put my empty glass on the table. "Well," I said, "if I see anything tonight, I shall be so much the wiser, for I come to the business with an open mind." "It's your own choosing," said the man with the withered arm once more. I heard the sound of a stick and a shambling step on the flags in the passage outside. The door creaked on its hinges as a second old man entered, more bent, more wrinkled, more aged even than the first. He supported himself by a single crutch. His eyes were covered by a shade. He sat down clumsily and began to cough. A monstrous shadow of him crouched upon the wall and mocked his action. "If," I said, "you will show me to this haunted room of yours, I will make myself comfortable there." "There's a candle on the slab outside the door," said the man with the withered arm. "But if you go to the Red Room tonight—" "This night of all nights," said the old woman, "you go alone." "Oh, very well," I answered. "And which way do I go?" They gave me directions, and the man with the shade looked at me. "Are you really going?" he said. "This night of all nights," said the woman. "But it's what I came for," I replied, and moved towards the door. I left the door wide open until the candle was well alight. Then I shut them in and walked down the chilly, echoing passage. I must confess that, despite my efforts to remain feeling matter-of-fact, I had been affected by the oddness of these three old pensioners in whose charge her ladyship had left the castle. They seemed to belong to another age, an older age, an age when omens and witches were credible, when ghosts were beyond denying. But with an effort, I dismissed such thoughts. The passage was cold and dusty, and my candle flared. Shadows came sweeping up the staircase after me and fled before me into the darkness overhead. At the landing, I stopped for a moment, as I thought I heard something rustle. Then, satisfied of the absolute silence, I pushed open the baize door and stood in the corridor. Everything was in its place. The house might have been deserted on the yesterday instead of 18 months ago. There were candles in the sconces, and whatever dust had gathered was distributed so evenly as to be invisible in the moonlight. The door to the Red Room and the steps up to it were in a shadowy corner. I entered, closed the door behind me, and turned the key I found in the lock. I stood with my candle held aloft and surveyed the great Red Room of Lorraine Castle, in which the young Duke had died, or begun his dying, for he had fallen headlong down the steps I had just ascended. That had been the end of his vigil, his gallant attempt to conquer the ghostly tradition of the place. There were other stories, and older stories that clung to the room, back to the beginning of it all, the tale of the timid wife and the tragic end that came to her husband's jest of frightening her. And looking round, one could well understand the legends that had sprouted in the room's black corners. My candle was a little tongue of flame in its vastness that left an ocean of mystery and suggestion beyond its island of light. There were candles on either side of two big mirrors, and on the mantelpiece. I lit them all. I lit the fire too, and when it was burning, I stood with my back to it and surveyed the room again. The shadow in the alcove at one end had that odd suggestion of a lurking, living thing that comes so easily in silence and solitude. To reassure myself that there was nothing tangible there, I went and stood the candle on the floor of the alcove and left it in that position. By this time, I was in a state of considerable nervous tension. The somber reds and blacks of the room troubled me. Even with 7 candles, the place was merely dim. Suddenly, I recalled the candles I had seen in the passage. With a slight effort, I walked out into the moonlight and returned with as many as 10. These I lit and placed where the shadows had lain deepest, some on the floor, some in the window recesses, until at last my 17 candles were so arranged that every inch of the room had the direct light of at least one of them. It occurred to me that when the ghost came, I could warn him not to trip over them. It was just after midnight that the candle in the alcove suddenly went out. I did not see it go out. I simply turned and saw that the darkness was there. Strong draught, I said aloud, and taking the matches from the table, I walked across the room in a leisurely manner to relight the corner. In the same moment, I saw the candle by one of the mirrors wink and go right out. Almost immediately, its companion followed it. The shadow seemed to take another step towards me. "This won't do," I said, at which the mantelpiece plunged into darkness. "What is it?" I cried. And then the candles on the wardrobe went out, and the one I had relit in the alcove followed. I was determined to relight the candles on the mantelpiece, but my hands were trembling so much that twice I missed the rough paper of the matchbox. But at last, I did it. With the same match, I relit the large mirror candles. For a moment, I seemed to gain on the darkness, but then, in a volley, 4 lights vanished, all in different corners of the room. With a cry of terror, I dashed this way and that, relighting 3 as 2 more vanished. But for all that, the lights kept going out. The shadows I feared and fought against returned and crept in upon me. I was now almost frantic with the horror of coming darkness. I leaped from candle to candle, bruised myself against the table, stumbled and fell. The 2 candles that remained alight finally went out, but there was light. Still light in the room, a red light. Fire. Of course, I could thrust a candle between the bars and relight it. I turned to where the flames were dancing between the coals, but as soon as I took 2 steps, the flames dwindled and vanished. I flung out my arms to thrust that terrible blackness from me, but it wrapped itself all around me, crushing all reason from my brain. I screamed with all my might and made a run for the door, but I struck heavily against the corner of the bed. I have a vague memory of battering myself to and fro, and darkness and my own wild crying. I remember a heavy blow on my forehead, a horrible sensation of falling, and then no more. I opened my eyes in daylight. My head was bandaged, and the man with the withered arm was watching my face. "You believe now," he said, "that the room is haunted." "Yes," I said, "the room is haunted. We who have lived here all our lives have never seen it," he said. "Tell us, is it the old Earl?" "No," I said. "I told you so," said the old woman. "It is his poor young countess." "It is not," I said. "There is no ghost there at all, but worse, far worse, the worst of all things that haunt poor mortal man. It is fear. Fear that will not have light nor sound, that will not bear with reason, that deafens and darkens and overwhelms. It followed me through the corridor. It fought against me in the room." I stopped. There was an interval of silence. The man with the shade sighed. "That is it," he said. "I knew that was it. A power of darkness. It lurks there always. You can feel it even in the daytime. Even of a bright summer's day. And in the dusk, it creeps along the corridor and follows you so that you dare not turn. There is fear in the room. Black fear. There it will be so long as this house endures."